Right now, while you are reading this, there is a plant growing in the crack of a sidewalk outside your window. It is growing in the empty lot 2 blocks from your house. It is growing along the edge of the highway. It is growing in abandoned fields, in backyard corners, in the gravel strip between parking lots and fences. It grows on every single continent on Earth except Antarctica. It has been growing quietly, patiently, stubbornly, for thousands upon thousands of years. And almost no one in the Western world knows you can eat it. Not just eat it, live off it, thrive on it, heal with it. This plant contains 5 times more magnesium than spinach. 5 times. Not 5% more. Not double. 5 times. More magnesium than any supplement pill you can buy at the pharmacy. More than any fortified cereal box with a smiling athlete on the front. More than the expensive powder you blend into your morning shake. One single plant produces up to 72,000 seeds per season, and those seeds do not die. They sit in the soil, alive and waiting, for up to 40 years. 40 years. Your grandmother could have planted this once, done absolutely nothing else, and you could be harvesting from that same original planting today. Yet the Western world looked at this plant and called it a weed. This is the story of how one of the most nutritious foods in human history was erased from our awareness. Not by accident, not by ignorance alone, by a system that only sees value in what it can sell. And today that story changes. The meal that shocked scientists. In 1950, workers were cutting peat from a bog near a small village in Denmark. It was cold, muddy, ordinary work. Then one of the workers stopped. There was a body in the mud. The body was so perfectly preserved that workers immediately called the police. They assumed someone had been recently buried in that bog. They thought they were looking at a crime scene from maybe last week or last month. The police came. Scientists came. And what those scientists discovered rewired our understanding of ancient human nutrition forever. The man in the bog had been dead for over 2,400 years. His name became Talland Man. His face was so intact, so human, so startlingly real that photographs of him still stop people cold today. Closed eyes, furrowed brow, a few days of stubble on his chin. He looked like a man who had simply fallen asleep in the mud and never woken up. But the scientists were not most interested in his face. They were interested in his stomach. In 2021, researchers from the Danish National Museum performed the most detailed analysis ever done on what Talland Man had eaten in the final hours of his life. They used microscopes powerful enough to see individual plant cells. They used chemical analysis to identify traces of fat and protein. They worked through the contents of his stomach like archaeologists working through a buried city. They found barley. They found flax seeds. They found wild buckwheat. They found several other grains and seeds. And one plant appeared in higher concentration than anything else. One plant filled more of his last meal than any grain, any seed, any other food source. A plant that American farmers today spray with herbicide every spring. Talland Man was not alone. Another preserved body from the same region, known as Grabalaman, showed the same pattern. Same plants, same intentional preparation, same evidence of a sophisticated food culture that researchers had completely overlooked. This was not desperate foraging. This was not a starving man eating whatever he could find. The seeds showed signs of intentional harvest, of storage, of cooking. This was agriculture. This was dinner. And this civilization knew exactly what it was doing. 300 million people already know. Walk into a kitchen in northern India on a cold winter morning. Watch the grandmother move through the room before sunrise. Watch her pull dark green leaves from a basket. Watch her cook those leaves with spices into a curry, or fold them into soft flatbreads called parathas. Watch the children sit down for breakfast without questioning what is in their food. For them, this is simply normal. This is Tuesday. Over 300 million people across South Asia eat this plant every single week. In the Himalayan foothills of Nepal, farmers call it bithu and consider it essential cold season nutrition. In Turkey, villagers have gathered it from wild hillsides for generations so long that no one can remember when the tradition started. In rural Mexico, grandmothers fold it into tamales and stir it into soups. They call it quilite. In northern India, it is bathua. In Britain, farmers once called it fat hen. American botanists call it Chenopodium album. Most people call it lamb's quarters. Here is what makes this astonishing. You know spinach, you know kale, you know arugula, Swiss chard, and collard greens. These plants are famous. They fill every grocery store. Nutritionists write about them. Fitness influencers photograph them. Health magazines put them on covers. But this plant, consumed by more people every week than all of those famous greens combined, does not exist in Western awareness. Most Americans have never heard any of its names. Most Europeans have never tasted it. Most grocery stores on 6 continents do not stock it. Why? Because no one ever gave it a unified name in English. Indians call it one thing, Mexicans call another. Turks say something different. British farmers had their own term. Botanists published papers under the Latin classification. Dozens of names. No single identity. And when a plant has no consistent name, it has no consistent presence in cookbooks, in research funding proposals, in public consciousness. The fragmentation was not intentional, but the result was complete erasure. What science actually found. Let's talk numbers, real numbers, not marketing claims. Peer-reviewed science. In 100 grams of raw lamb's quarters leaves, your body receives 96% of its daily vitamin C requirement, 73% of its vitamin A, 31% of its calcium, and all of this for only 43 calories. Compare this to spinach, the vegetable that nutritionists have been celebrating for decades. Lamb's quarters contains approximately 2 times more vitamin B1 than spinach, 2 times more vitamin B2, 3 times more vitamin C, 3 times more calcium. Now compare to kale, the green that launched 1,000 wellness brands and made billionaires out of smoothie companies. Lamb's quarters contains about 2.5 times more vitamin A than kale. It is richer in protein, richer in fiber, richer in almost every mineral that matters for human health. But the number that changes everything is the magnesium. Research published by the United States Botanic Garden compared lamb's quarters against lettuce, spinach, and cabbage. The results were not subtle. Lamb's quarters contains more than twice as much potassium as those commercial greens, 3 times as much calcium, and 5 times as much magnesium. 5 times. No pill, no expensive supplement formula, no powder, no subscription delivery service, just leaves that grow in sidewalk cracks across the entire planet. And it gets more interesting. Many leafy greens contain compounds called oxalates. Oxalates are a problem because they actually block your body from absorbing the minerals you're trying to eat. Spinach is one of the worst offenders. It looks incredible on paper, but much of what you are eating never reaches your cells. Research on lamb's quarters found something different. Its ratio of these blocking compounds to its mineral content is lower than in spinach or beets. The magnesium in lamb's quarters is more bioavailable. More of it actually gets into your blood. More of it actually reaches your bones and muscles and nerves. Your body was designed to absorb food, not pills. The quinoa connection. Nobody told you about you have heard of quinoa. Of course you have. The ancient Andean superfood. $8 per pound at the health food store. The grain that Instagram wellness influencers put in their smoothie bowls and salad jars. The seed that generates hundreds of millions of dollars in annual sales. Quinoa's scientific name is Chenopodium quinoa. Lamb's quarters' scientific name is Chenopodium album. Same genus, close relatives, similar nutritional profiles. Research published in the Journal of Food Composition and Analysis compared them directly. Scientists ran the numbers on protein content, amino acids, mineral density, and overall nutritional value. The results surprised the researchers themselves. Lamb's quarters demonstrated superior nutritional and amino acid profiles compared to quinoa in multiple categories. The wheat outperforms the superfood. The free plant beats the expensive one. The thing growing in the crack of your sidewalk right now is more nutritious than the grain you are paying $8 per pound to buy at a specialty store. And almost no one in the Western world has been told this. Not in school, not by a doctor, not by a nutritionist, not by a single grocery store sign or government health guideline. There is a reason for that silence, and that reason has everything to do with money. 5,000 years ago, on the other side of the world from Denmark, something remarkable happened. In the river valleys of eastern North America, long before Columbus, long before European contact, long before anyone in the West had written a single word about this land, indigenous peoples looked at a wild plant and made a decision that would shape their entire civilization. They decided to cultivate it, not just gather it, not just eat it when they stumbled across it. They intentionally selected the best specimens. They saved the largest seeds. They created storage systems. They developed trade networks built around this one crop. They passed the knowledge from grandmother to daughter, from elder to child, across hundreds of generations. Archaeologists call what they built the Eastern Agricultural Complex. It predates the arrival of corn from Mexico by nearly 2,000 years. For millennia, thousands of years, Native American civilizations grew wealthy and fed entire populations on crops that modern Americans walk past every day without a second glance. At Russell Cave in Alabama, archaeologists found direct evidence. Seeds from this plant family stored with clear intention, organized, preserved, treated as a precious resource. This was not a backup food. This was a staple crop, a foundation. And then, independently, on a completely different continent, the same discovery happened again. In the highlands of central Mexico, in the mountains of the Andes, in the woodlands of eastern North America. 3 separate civilizations, 3 separate continents, 3 completely independent moments in human history, and all 3 looked at the same family of plants and reached the same conclusion. This feeds our people. This is worth protecting. When 3 civilizations independently make the same decision across thousands of miles of ocean, that is not coincidence. That is the plant proving its own value. The seed that refuses to die here is the number that will stay with you. One single lamb's quarters plant produces an average of 72,000 seeds per season. Some plants produce over 100,000. Under ideal conditions, researchers have documented individual plants releasing up to 500,000 seeds. One plant, 500,000 seeds. But the number of seeds is not even the most important part. Those seeds do not die. Studies on seed longevity found that lamb's quarters seeds remain alive and viable in soil for 12 to 78 years. One study documented 32% germination rates after 20 years of burial underground. Another study found viable seeds after 40 years. Think about what 40 years of seed survival actually means in human terms. If you planted lamb's quarters in your backyard today, in the year 2026, and then did absolutely nothing else, moved away, forgot about it, never returned, those seeds would still be alive and ready to grow in the year 2066. Your children would be able to harvest from your single planting. A child born today would grow into a full adult and still find those seeds waiting patiently in the soil. The plant also does not need your help to spread. It disperses its own seeds. It requires no collection, no storage in bags or jars, no replanting next season. It simply drops its seeds into the soil and waits for the right moment. Rain, soil disturbance, a passing footstep, and suddenly a new generation emerges. And where most plants are demanding about conditions, lamb's quarters genuinely does not care. Research documented maximum germination rates of 94% under ideal temperatures. But the plant also successfully germinated under drought conditions, in high salinity and in poor, degraded soil. Light soil, heavy soil, acidic soil, alkaline soil, sandy soil, clay soil, from the frozen edges of Scandinavia to the sun-baked valleys of South Africa, from sea level to high mountain meadows. This is not a fragile, pampered greenhouse plant. This is a survivor. This is a plant that was built for a world that is uncertain, unpredictable, and sometimes hostile, which raises an obvious question. A plant this nutritious, this abundant, this resilient, that has fed civilizations across the entire planet for thousands of years. Why did the Western world decide it was an enemy? The industry that needs you, deficient. The global magnesium supplement market reached $3.5 billion in 2023. Projections show it growing to nearly $7 billion by 2032. That growth depends on one thing: continued magnesium deficiency. Government statistics reveal that nearly 90% of American adults are not meeting recommended daily intake for magnesium. Some studies suggest that as much as half the total population is clinically deficient. Muscle cramps, chronic fatigue that sleep never fixes, anxiety without obvious cause, difficulty sleeping, migraines. These symptoms are so common today that most people simply assume they are a normal part of modern life. They are not normal. They are the symptoms of a missing mineral. And the missing mineral grows freely in sidewalk cracks across every city on Earth. The supplement industry will never tell you about this plant. There is no profit in pointing customers toward free nutrition. Magnesium oxide, magnesium citrate, magnesium glycinate. Every formulation has different absorption rates, different marketing claims, different price points, and every bottle eventually runs empty. The business model is built entirely on repetition. On your continued need to come back, pay again, refill the cabinet. Lamb's Quarters breaks that model completely. A single established patch, maintained without any effort, provides more bioavailable magnesium than any pill on the shelf. It asks nothing in return: no subscription, no monthly delivery, no loyalty card. The global seed industry tells the same story. Over $60 billion in annual revenue. Corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton. These crops require new seed purchases every single planting season. Many modern crop varieties are hybrids that do not produce true seeds. Some are patented. The entire business model depends on farmers coming back every year to buy what they planted last year. Lamb's Quarters refuses to participate in this transaction. It self-seeds. It spreads. It becomes wild. It becomes free. You buy it once, or more accurately, you simply stop killing it, and it stays with you forever. What cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter public consciousness. The research funding patterns show this clearly. Search the global database of medical literature for fish oil studies. Over 15,000 results. Search for magnesium supplement studies. Thousands more. Now search for Chenopodium album nutritional research. A few hundred studies. Almost all conducted in India, Nepal, or Pakistan. Almost none funded by Western institutions. Scientific papers repeatedly use one word to describe this plant. The same word appears again and again across dozens of studies in journals around the world. Neglected. No shadowy meeting ever took place. No executive ever wrote a memo ordering the erasure of Lamb's Quarters from Western awareness. No conspiracy was needed. Economic systems simply see what benefits economic systems. Research follows funding. Funding follows profit potential. Profit requires control, and this plant cannot be controlled. What your ancestors knew: during the winter of 1944 to 1945, families across the Netherlands were starving. Supply lines had collapsed. Farms lay abandoned. What historians later called the Hunger Winter killed tens of thousands of people. The families who survived often did so because someone remembered old knowledge, because a grandmother recognized a plant growing in a disturbed field, because a child had been taught to see food where others saw weeds. Lamb's Quarters grew everywhere. It grew in bombed lots. It grew in abandoned gardens. It grew between the cracks of destroyed buildings. It asked nothing from the infrastructure that had collapsed around it. The same plant fed rural American families through the Great Depression. It appears in ancient Chinese agricultural texts as the reliable backup when rice harvest failed. Peasant farmers across the entire sweep of Chinese history knew that when everything else disappeared, this green would appear. Our ancestors maintained relationships with wild plants precisely because they understood something that modern convenience made us forget. Civilization is fragile. Supply chains are fragile. Grocery stores are fragile. The pandemic made this visible for one brief, startling moment when shelves emptied within days. Then we forgot again. The knowledge to rebuild this resilience is genuinely simple. Look for the dusty white coating on young leaves, like someone lightly dusted flour across the surface. The leaves are triangular or diamond-shaped. The edges have gentle, irregular teeth. The coating washes off easily under running water. Young plants look fresh and bright. As the plant matures, small clusters of tiny green flowers appear on upright spikes. The most common confusion is with a related plant called arash. Here is the important fact. Arash is also edible. The worst-case outcome of misidentification is slightly saltier greens. Harvest the young leaves when plants reach about 6 to 8 inches tall. This is when they are most tender. You can continuously harvest throughout the growing season by taking the top growth. New leaves regenerate within days. Young shoots can be eaten raw in salads. The flavor is mild, slightly mineral, reminiscent of spinach but cleaner. For cooking, treat lamb's quarters exactly as you would treat spinach. Sauté with garlic and olive oil. Add to soups. Fold into eggs. Blend into green sauces. The leaves wilt down significantly when heated, just like spinach. So start with more than you think you need. For anyone concerned about oxalates, the compounds that can interfere with mineral absorption, brief blanching solves the problem. Pour boiling water over the leaves, wait 2 minutes, drain. The oxalates dissolve into the water you throw away. What remains is pure, clean nutrition ready to eat. The seeds are already waiting. Right now in the soil of almost every garden, every vacant lot, every disturbed patch of ground in your neighborhood, lamb's quarter seeds are sitting. They have been there for years, some for decades. They are not dead. They are waiting. Waiting for someone to stop spraying herbicide. Waiting for the soil to be disturbed. Waiting for a gardener who has learned to see food where previous generations were taught to see a problem. The supplement industry will not send you a newsletter about this plant. The seed company will not include it in their spring catalog. The Agricultural Extension Office will tell you to kill it before it spreads. But the Indian grandmother cooking bathua before sunrise knows the truth. The Nepali farmer gathering bethu from the hillside knows the truth. The Mexican cook folding quilit into masa knows the truth. And now you do too. The seeds have been waiting in your soil for 40 years. The only question left is what you decide to do with that knowledge. There is a moment that happens to every person who learns this story. It happens the first time you walk outside after reading these words. You are moving through your normal day, parking lot, sidewalk, backyard, the edge of a trail, and then you see it, a plant with dusty white leaves, diamond-shaped, growing in a crack where nothing should grow. And for the first time in your entire life, you do not see a weed. You see food. You see 5 times more magnesium than spinach. You see seeds that will live in the soil for 40 years. You see the same plant that a man in Denmark ate 2,400 years ago as his final, intentional, carefully prepared meal. You see something that 3 separate civilizations independently decided was worth cultivating, worth protecting, worth building a food system around. That moment, that single shift in perception, is more powerful than any supplement you will ever buy. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you understand why you were never taught to see it, your relationship with the entire food system around you changes permanently. The body that was running on empty. Let's talk honestly about what magnesium deficiency actually does to a human being living a normal modern life. Your body uses magnesium for over 300 enzymatic reactions. 300. This is not a minor mineral. This is infrastructure. Muscle function, nerve transmission, blood sugar regulation, blood pressure, protein synthesis, energy production. All of it depends on adequate magnesium. When it runs low, everything suffers slowly and quietly. The first signs are easy to dismiss. Muscle cramps at night, fatigue that does not improve with sleep, a low-level anxiety that has no obvious cause, difficulty falling asleep even when you are exhausted, headaches that come and go without reason. Most people never connect these symptoms to a missing mineral. Most doctors do not test for it either. Standard blood tests measure magnesium in the blood, but only 1% of your body's total magnesium exists in the bloodstream. The other 99% lives in your bones and soft tissues. You can be severely deficient while a blood test shows perfectly normal levels. And modern agriculture has made this problem dramatically worse over the past 70 years. Studies comparing vegetables grown in 1950 to vegetables grown today show dramatic declines in mineral content across the board. Industrial farming grows crops faster using chemical fertilizers that replace nitrogen and phosphorus, but ignore trace minerals. The soil becomes depleted. The food grown in that soil becomes depleted. The spinach your grandmother ate in 1960 contained measurably more magnesium than the spinach you buy at the grocery store today. Depleted soil produces depleted food. Depleted food produces depleted bodies. Depleted bodies create demand for supplements. Supplements create profits. Profits fund research on more supplements. The cycle feeds itself. Lamb's quarters breaks this cycle because it grows where other plants struggle. Its deep taproot reaches nutrients that shallow-rooted commercial vegetables cannot access. It pulls minerals from depths that industrial farming has not yet exhausted. It concentrates what the soil still contains. The plant was not designed for a perfect world. It was designed for a difficult one, and it has been waiting for you to notice. The climate is already changing the game. Something is happening to the global food system right now that almost no mainstream conversation is honestly addressing. Droughts are intensifying across every major agricultural region on Earth. Heat waves are destroying harvests that farmers have grown reliably for generations. Water tables are dropping in places that once seemed inexhaustible. Irrigation is becoming more expensive, more restricted, more uncertain every single year. The industrial food system, the one that replaced thousands of years of traditional food knowledge with monoculture, chemical dependency, and global supply chains, is showing cracks that grow wider every season. The average meal you eat today traveled over 1,500 miles before reaching your plate. Every mile of that journey depends on fuel, on functioning roads, on stable political relationships between countries, on electricity that keeps refrigeration running, on laborers who show up and get paid, on weather that cooperates. Every single link in that chain is a potential failure point. Lamb's quarters was built for exactly the world we are now entering. Researchers documented something remarkable about this plant's stress tolerance. It successfully germinates under drought conditions that kill conventional crops. It grows in high salinity soil that most vegetables cannot survive. It establishes itself in poor, degraded soil where other plants simply refuse to grow. This plant did not evolve for the comfortable, predictable, well-irrigated world of 20th century industrial agriculture. It evolved over millions of years in a world that was unpredictable, harsh, and unforgiving. It prepared for conditions that our pampered grocery store crops cannot survive. Every garden that maintains a lamb's quarters patch is holding insurance against uncertain harvests. Every person who learns to identify and eat this plant is rebuilding a layer of resilience that modern convenience quietly stripped away. Your great-grandparents had this knowledge. The generation before them had it, the generation before that. All the way back through history, across every culture on Earth, people maintained relationships with wild plants precisely because they understood something fundamental. The grocery store is not a guarantee. It is a convenience. There is a difference. What you do tomorrow morning. This is the part where most health content gives you a complicated protocol, a 12-step plan, a shopping list of expensive products, a subscription to a monthly box. This is different. Tomorrow morning, before you do anything else, walk outside. Look down. Look at the edges of your garden beds, the base of your fence, the disturbed soil near your driveway. Look at the vacant lot on your street. Look at the cracks in the sidewalk. You are almost certainly looking at lamb's quarters right now without knowing it. The identification is genuinely simple. Young plants have a fine, dusty white or silver coating on their leaves, as though someone lightly dusted them with flour. The leaves are roughly triangular or diamond-shaped with soft, irregular edges. The coating feels slightly waxy and washes off easily underwater. As the plant grows taller, small clusters of tiny green flowers appear along upright stems. The whole plant looks vigorous, healthy, and slightly silver in morning light. When you find it, do not pull it out. That is the entire first step. Simply stop removing it. If you want to eat it, and after everything you now know, the question is why you would not. Harvest the young top leaves when the plant is about 6 to 8 inches tall. Rinse them well. Add a handful to your morning eggs. Saute a bowlful with garlic and a splash of olive oil. Fold them into a soup that is already simmering. Blend them into a smoothie with fruit. The flavor is mild, slightly mineral, cleaner than spinach. Your body will recognize it immediately because your body evolved over millions of years eating exactly this kind of food. If you want to ensure a permanent supply, scatter a handful of seeds on disturbed soil in spring after the last frost. Water them a few times until you see the first seedlings. Then step back and let the plant do what it has been doing since before humans built their first cities. For seed harvest in late summer, wait until the seed heads turn dark and dry on the plant. Strip the clusters into a bowl, winnow lightly to remove the chaff, and store in a sealed jar in a cool, dry place. Those seeds will remain viable for years, decades if stored properly. This is your insurance policy. Seeds that require no electricity, no supply chain, no functioning store on the corner, just dry storage and patience. The moment everything shifts, here is what happens to people who add lamb's quarters to their lives. Not immediately, not in the first week, but after a month, after 2 months, something changes. The night cramps that woke them up for years, gone. The afternoon fatigue that felt like a permanent feature of adult life, fading. The low-level anxiety that had no name and no obvious cause, quieter. The sleep that used to take hours to arrive, arriving faster. They cannot always explain it precisely. They just feel more like themselves, more grounded, less like something is slightly wrong that they cannot identify. That is magnesium. That is a mineral returning to a body that had been running on empty for years, fed by a depleted food system that never replaced what it quietly took away. And it did not cost them anything except the willingness to look down. The real meaning of this story: 3,000 years ago, a man in Denmark sat down to eat a meal of carefully prepared greens and grains. That meal was preserved in his stomach through 2.5 millennia of history, waiting for scientists with powerful microscopes to find it and read it like a message. The message is this: your ancestors knew things that you were never taught. They knew which plants healed. They knew which plants fed entire communities through hard winters. They knew which seeds to save and which ground to trust. They passed that knowledge through hundreds of generations, through wars and famines and migrations, and the rise and fall of empires. And then, in the space of about 70 years, industrial agriculture and consumer food culture erased most of it. Not maliciously, not through conspiracy, simply through the gravitational pull of profit. The system funded what it could sell. It forgot what it could not. But the knowledge did not disappear. It survived in the kitchens of 300 million South Asian families, in the mountain villages of Nepal, in the traditional cooking of rural Mexico, in the hands of elderly Polish grandmothers making their family's winter dish from memory. The knowledge survived everywhere that industrial agriculture did not achieve total dominance. And now it is surviving here, in these words, in your hands. The supplement industry will keep selling you magnesium pills. The seed company will keep selling you annual varieties that cannot reproduce themselves. The agricultural system will keep spraying herbicide on one of the most nutritious plants on the surface of this planet. But the seeds in your soil do not read market reports. They do not check stock prices. They have been sitting underground, alive, patient, and waiting for decades. They were waiting for you to learn their name. Now you know it.